CocoChiya is not about Cocoa. CocoChiya is not about Chiya. CocoChiya is about Shero. Spoilers for Season 3, and I'll put another warning if I bring up the manga. So in my last video, I asked you guys what I should do next, and one of the responses was something related to Shero. Okay, I can do that. And it just so happens that today is Chiya's birthday, at least at the time of me recording this video. So I asked myself, what's a video I can do with both Chiya and Shero? What's that? A Chiya-Shero relationship video? Don't be silly. It's obviously CocoChiya. CocoChiya is considered one of the big relationships of Gochiusa, but for the longest time, and for the life of me, I could not tell you why. From my perspective, Cocoa and Chiya just bumped into each other, and they became best friends. Now, while that is on brand for Cocoa if I've known you for 3 seconds we're friends Hoto, I didn't see any special synergy that justified the title of best friend. In my opinion, this relationship didn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as the likes of Rise Shero, CocoChiya, and the most developed relationship of all time, Megurin. But is there really nothing special? Are they really only best friends by name? Do they really fail to live up to the rest of these pillars of Gochiusa? Well, of course not, because if any of those things were true, I would not be making this video. That being said, I did have trouble grasping this relationship, and part of this problem for me was that I didn't properly understand Chiya in the first place. I could tell you things about her menu names, her love for Japanese culture, her tendency for comedy routines, but what did I know beyond that? I couldn't grasp her essence. Gochiusa does an insanely good job of making their characters feel real. For example, I can see past the shyness of Chino to the formative experiences of losing loved ones. I can see past Cocoa's energy that she uses as a shield for her inferiority complex. But for a while, I couldn't see past Chiya's pranks and gimmicks. It seemed like there was nothing else to her. Like she was just there to tease Shero and provide comedic relief. On my first, I kid you not, 7 watch-throughs, I paid almost no attention to Chiya outside of the punchlines she was a part of. But, like I said, Gochiusa is really good at humanizing its characters and making them feel three-dimensional, and Chiya is no exception. But I will admit, it did take a little longer. Chiya is many things: ambitious, whimsical, kind, and seemingly confident. Chiya is often seen as wise, or at least knowing more than she lets on, like when she comforts Shero about being in a different school in Season 1, Episode 4, or when she talks to Chino about jealousy. She's got an air of untouchability, both literally in ball games and figuratively as she quietly smiles in the background, always one step ahead, like when she takes the picture of everyone else taking a picture in Season 2, Episode 12, or when she flips the table on Shero trying to embarrass her. Of course, she's not completely unflappable. There are moments when she gets down, like in Episode 7 when she mentions that Takahiro's desserts are better than Amausa's, or in Episode 10 when she mentions being jealous of the Rabbit House trio working together. But she's always ready to bounce back at a moment's notice, usually for a punchline. In fact, she often gets down as a punchline, like when she tells Shero she can't even put a single puzzle piece together, when she was the only one not cuddled by Mocha, in Season 3 Episode 1 when Shero says she doesn't want to work together at Amausa, or later in the episode when Shero dives to catch the cup she was holding onto. The list goes on. It seems like Chiya is never really caught off guard or affected by anything, unless she thinks that doing so would make for a good punchline. And this makes her seem like a very confident and secure person. But of course, all of this is a facade. A front she puts up to appear stronger than she actually is. When she comforts Chino about jealousy, she can do so because it's a sensation that's all too familiar to her. When she gets in a fight with Shero, she says she was only sad about Takahiro's dessert being better than hers, but this is just a deflection. Of course the real reason was their fight. Her reaction to the misunderstanding with Cocoa in Season 2 basically confirms this. And as is the nature of humor in general, her constant jokes are just another self-defense mechanism, a sign that she doesn't handle serious situations too well. Negative or positive, like when she stops Chino halfway through her letter of recommendation in Season 3, or when she can't directly tell Shero that she wants to work together. Chiya is like Cocoa. Despite her happy-go-lucky nature, she has internal insecurities. She's just much better at hiding them. With this in mind, let's start talking about the actual point of the video. For context, from when I first found Gochiusa to the release of Bloom, I didn't read the manga. I was anime only, meaning I only had access to seasons 1 and 2 worth of content to go off of, which doesn't give us much to work with in terms of CocoChiya. In season 1, the best we get is Chiya indirectly giving Cocoa some medicine. In season 2, we get them having a fight, which is just Chiya slightly pouting. Now, while this moment is absolutely great, the actual CocoChiya stuff is relegated to a B-plot happening in the background, while Furimo Saretai gets focus. And while they are shown to be close here, holy crap does it not compare to what we get later on! Or, at least that's what I thought. Because what we get later on is all dependent on the foundation built up in these first 2 seasons. Season 3 onward just shows them being close, not really explaining why they are. If you're not already convinced that these two are best friends, all the focus they get in Bloom and the manga is going to feel hollow. And that's how I felt until I revisited the older seasons, specifically from a standpoint of trying to figure out this relationship. Let's start with their meeting. Chiya is out waving around some chestnut yokon to attract some rabbits, but instead she catches a Cocoa, who eats 3 entire bars, by the way. When Chiya explains her naming of the dessert, Cocoa takes a liking to it, and Chiya, from this point on, says that they'll get along great. Okay, pretty standard, but how does this translate into best friend material? Well, just like CocoChiya, we lack the proper context till later on. And what is that context? Shero. See, I told you this video had Shero in it, because to understand CocoChiya, we must first understand Chiya Shero. Don't worry though, I won't go into too much detail here, I'll leave enough for its own separate video. At the beginning of the series, Shero has been admitted into the fancy rich girl school on scholarship, and Chiya is very much worried about her, shown by how she stops by to wake her up and give her milk every morning and occasionally panties. Not only this, she just started her new part-time job at Fleur de Lapin, an herbal tea cafe. A cafe that isn't Amausa-an, something she would go on to make a big deal of later on. Even if it's not shown here, judging by later interactions, we know that Chiya at this point in time is a ball of separation anxiety and jealousy. Heck, when we first meet her, she's feeding rabbits, and this, in my opinion, is because rabbits remind her of Shero, as they're a central part of their relationship. And you might be thinking that this is reading too deep, but that kind of overanalysis is kinda what I do. Additionally, this meeting takes place on the first day of school. Well, first day of Shero's school, not Chiya's. Which leaves Chiya alone with her thoughts and no school to distract her from the fact that, from her perspective, Shero has grown apart from her, both figuratively and literally. And then, while she's swirling in her own feelings, in comes Cocoa, bright as the sun and just as amicable. Her first real connection outside of Shero, and on top of that, she's going to the same school. She's not just a replacement for Shero. To Chiya, Cocoa represents the possibility of living a life outside of just clinging to Shero. That she can have fun at her new school, even if she doesn't have her oldest friend by her side. And you just know that Chiya was agonizing over going to a separate school, but after meeting Cocoa, it doesn't seem like it'll be all that bad. But what about Cocoa's perspective, you might ask? And to that I say, what about Cocoa's perspective? She doesn't need a reason to warm up to you, that's her whole character. Jokes aside, unlike Chiya, Cocoa's side of things is pretty clearly laid out in the anime. She's new to town and is happy to have made a friend. And a manzai partner. Speaking of, let's talk about manzai. Great segue. Simply put, manzai consists of someone acting silly and someone calling them out. And Chiya absolutely loves to be the silly one, often forcing Shero into the straight man role, which is funny considering she's not straight nor is she a man. Cocoa's willingness to go along with any bit, shown by how she says, "That's so cool even if I don't understand it," gives Chiya the perfect partner for spontaneous funny man shenanigans. Anyway, manzai, for how prevalent it is in her character later on, is not present in Cocoa and Chiya's first meeting. In fact, by going to the wrong school, she messes up, but it's not on purpose, nor does she draw any attention to the fact that she just did so. And this trend continues into episode 3 when she legitimately thinks that Fleur is a sketchy place. It's only later on that she starts to intentionally act unreasonably to set up a punchline. Now, am I saying that Cocoa got Chiya into manzai by giving her these scenarios? Maybe. It's something to think about. Another way to think about it, however, is through the lens of the manga. Spoilers for the manga, by the way. In the manga, we get to see Anko and Chiya's first meeting, which of course involves Shero. But in this, we get a passing comment of some people walking by that it looks like a manzai routine, and it's reasonable to assume that this is Koi's way of telling us that this was the true spark that caused Chiya to love comedy. Notice how this comedy is still covering up a moment of crisis, by the way. Anyways, if we take this as the start of Chiya's Manzai career, the fact that she wasn't doing Manzai when she met Cocoa means that she was into Manzai, but that she was so depressed about Shero going to a different school that she stopped doing it. Until she met Cocoa and cheered up. Everything after their meeting is pretty much icing on the cake, not really a development of a relationship, just showing off how strong it already is. So if I were to detail those moments here, I'd just be talking about cute things, which I do love to do, but I'll keep it short. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this one scene at the beginning of the graduation trip where Shero calls the two of them newlyweds. And that was CocoChiya. Indeed, this relationship revolves around Shero, and specifically how Cocoa helps Chiya adjust to her new life, not without Shero, but certainly with a lot less Shero in it than before. But more than just filling a Shero-sized hole in Chiya's heart, Cocoa sort of acts as a coping mechanism for her, which is kind of becoming a trend now that I think about it. Maybe Therapist Cocoa is my next video. Anyway, happy birthday to Chiya, and I'll see you next time.